If you've ever noticed that you can't fully enjoy a win before you're already thinking about the next one, that's not ingratitude. That's not restlessness. That's something much more specific, and it runs deeper than most people realize. Ambitious people don't just want more. They experience the world differently. They process rest differently. They process success differently. And they carry something inside them that most people around them never quite understand, including themselves. From the outside, ambition looks like drive. It looks like early mornings and big goals and a certain hunger that other people admire from a distance. But from the inside, it feels like something else entirely. It feels like a low hum that never quite turns off, a quiet dissatisfaction that sits underneath even the good moments. You finish something real, something you worked hard for, and for maybe a few hours, it feels good. And then something shifts. The target moves, the bar lifts, and you're already somewhere else in your mind. People close to ambitious people often misread this. They think it's greed, they think it's ego, but that's not usually what's happening. What's actually happening is that the ambitious person isn't measuring themselves against outcomes. They're measuring themselves against a version of themselves that doesn't exist yet, and that version is always just slightly ahead of wherever they are right now. Here's what that pattern actually reveals. Ambitious people tend to have a very complex relationship with the present moment, not because they're broken, but because their nervous system has learned, usually early, that the present is just a launch pad, that stillness is something you earn later, that rest is something you justify, not something you simply take. A lot of this gets formed in environments where love or approval felt conditional on performance. Not always dramatically, sometimes it was subtle. A parent who lit up more when you achieved, a classroom where your value was tied to your output, a household where being useful meant being safe. That's not weakness, that's adaptation. The ambitious drive, in many cases, started as a very intelligent response to an environment that rewarded forward motion, and what began as a survival strategy slowly became a personality, became an identity, became the lens through which everything is filtered.
And here's where it gets interesting. Most people assume ambition is about wanting more, but the psychology underneath it is often about something else entirely. It's not about the goal. It's about what the goal is supposed to resolve. For a lot of ambitious people, achievement carries a quiet promise. A promise that once they reach a certain point, once they build the thing, earn the number, hit the milestone, something internal will finally settle. Some tension they've been holding will release. Some voice that's been quietly questioning their worth will go quiet. But the strange paradox is this. The goal, when reached, almost never delivers that resolution, because the resolution was never actually about the goal. It was about something underneath it, something that external achievement was never designed to touch. So the mind does the only logical thing it knows. It moves the target forward, sets a new bar, starts again. Not because the person is incapable of satisfaction, but because the part of them seeking satisfaction is looking in the wrong direction, and they can feel it somewhere, that faint sense that no matter what they accomplish, the scale never quite balances. This is also why ambitious people often feel profoundly alone in their drive. The people around them see someone who has it together, someone with direction, someone capable, and so they don't think to ask how that person is doing underneath all the motion. And the ambitious person, because they've built so much of their identity around capability, often doesn't know how to answer that question honestly, even when someone does ask. So they keep moving, because movement feels like control. And control, for someone who learned early that the world could shift without warning, feels like the closest thing to safety. There's also something worth noting about how ambitious people handle failure. It's often disproportionately heavy, not because they're fragile, but because failure doesn't just feel like a setback. It feels like evidence. evidence for that quiet internal question that's been running in the background all along. Am I actually enough? And so they work harder, not always from joy, sometimes from something quieter and more complicated than joy. That's not weakness. That's a very human response to a very deep uncertainty. What makes this pattern so invisible is that it's wrapped in something that the world celebrates. Ambition is praised, hustle is rewarded, restlessness gets rebranded as vision, and so the person living inside that experience rarely stops to examine it, because from the outside, it looks like they're doing everything right. But beneath the output, beneath the goals and the timelines and the constant forward motion, there's often a person who has never fully sat with the question of who they are when they're not achieving anything. Not as a criticism, as an observation. Because the ambitious people who eventually find something that feels like peace, not stillness, not the absence of drive, but actual peace, are usually the ones who get curious about that question, who start to separate their identity from their output, who begin to understand that the hunger wasn't random, that it came from somewhere, that it made sense given everything that shaped them. Ambition, at its core, is energy, powerful, real, and deeply human. But like all energy, it has a source, and the source matters more than most ambitious people are ever encouraged to examine. Once you see the pattern, you can't unsee it, not just in yourself, but in the people around you. The ones always chasing, always building, always one goal away from the version of themselves they're trying to reach. It was never random. It was always a pattern, and understanding the pattern is the beginning of something. If this explained something you felt but never quite had words for, there's more to uncover.